one more story that's a bit similar here with regard to the bowerbirds that you brought up and play and explorer modes is that in one species of bowerbirds where the males build these beautiful bowers, much like palaces for the females to come by and assess, the males know as they build them which direction the females are going to come through. And in fact, they, in some cases, sort of build the pathway so that the females always come from a particular direction. And they actually build forced perspective, just like human artists, forced perspective into their bowers such that from the place that the females will first view them, they look bigger and grander than they actually are. And this, again, is the way that males can modify what females will think of them and enhance their chances.
So let's think about that really seriously. Let's just talk about the birds. So what exactly is it, do you think, that the bowerbird male is demonstrating, and what is it exactly that the female is looking for? Because you might think, well, what the hell does nest building, artistic creativity have to do with a bowerbird? But something, and there's some analogy to, well, human beauty, because they actually make beautiful things, these birds, and they look beautiful to us, which is, kind of peculiar, all things considered. What are they selecting for?
Is that the purpose of beauty, right? Like, is it just a kind of a artifact of our genes that helps us discern which peacock is the most brilliant or which cardinal is the most red, right? Because the female cardinal has to have something inside her that tells her which one is the reddest, right?
Well, beauty, as is the three transcendentals, beauty, goodness, truth. Part of what people recognize about these things is that they are ends in themselves often. And the way you just phrased it, well, the beauty of the bird, the beauty of the woman, the beauty of the beauty is to achieve making it instrumental towards some other good or outcome. Now, we certainly do interact with beauty in that way in the world. The good host sets a beautiful table in order to achieve hospitality and perhaps even have that hospitality achieve other ends. And so beauty can be wielded and used as instrumental, but many have noted that part of the reason beauty plays the way it is because it has a telos, it has an end in itself that needs no other instrumentality often. And that it's just something to behold, and in that beholding, I mean, when we started off talking about this this charismatic awakening, and so often in moments like that, people are just drawn into beauty. I think of Keith Green, who was an evangelical musician in the early wave of Jesus music, which was about the same time. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see. Mm-hmm. And you have that when you fall in love. A couple in love can sit and all they want to do is be in each other's presence. You have that in the 23rd Psalm. I want to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So there's an aspect to beauty that is an end point in itself, that in that sense, the instrumentality of it is sort of inconsequential, and it doesn't even need to be there because there's beauty and that's it. When people go to Yosemite Valley, I don't live that far from Yosemite Valley, and I love going there. It's fun watching tourists get off the bus, because once they step foot in the valley floor and they see El Capitan and Half Dome and this amazing valley, the beauty just, they've spent thousands of dollars, traveled thousands of miles, and just in that moment, there's no instrumentality necessary. Everything leading there, the air flight, the bus, the hotels, the money, all of that was instrumental towards just the beauty. It's an end in itself. And the same sometimes for goodness and truth. They just want to know, and and this is where they sometimes come together. If you're working on this math equation and you work and you work and you work and you finally solve it or resolve it, and then it's just, there need be no other justification.
We struggle to know what intelligibility itself is.
It's my whole career.
Yeah. But a worthy thing to spend one's life pursuing.
Yes. I think that point, again, is very well said. I'm going to say something here, and it's making myself vulnerable into misinterpretation. But in many, many ways, I prefer Christian Neoplatonism over pagan Neoplatonism. Now, I have a special love for Plotinus because I think he's the first great synthesizer. He makes the synthesis of Augustine possible, of Erigena, of Maximus, of Origen, right? He makes it possible because, I really love Christian Neoplatonism, precisely because of those two things and more. But let's say the Christian Neoplatonism really, it's also because of the contrast with the Gnostics, really embraces embodiment, right? But it struggles, and it's I'm not saying it's perfect.
Christianity always tugged Neoplatonism down in a certain sense and forced it to take materiality and embodiment more seriously than the pagan version often felt inclined to do.
And I totally acknowledge that, and I appreciate it, and I admire it. So that's clear. Well, I think that Christianity is still struggling with the relationship between embodiment, incorporation, and incarnation, because it invokes all three of these sort of.
What do you mean by incorporation?
We are all the body of Christ.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You say those three things again, John? I didn't get them down.
Embodiment, incorporation, and incarnation, right? Because they're related. I mean, the incarnation was some kind of embodiment, but presumably it has a kind of particularity to it. But like to your point, Paul, it has to somehow have a profound particularity and a profound universality, right? And so, right? And then, like I said, incorporation, which is somehow distributed cognition, has a distributed body that is somehow also related to the embodiment of each and the incarnation of the Logos. And I'm not going to say anything more. I'm just saying that I see that very much something that is still, we're like trying to get worked out, especially right now. Jonathan, for example, is talking a lot about incorporation and its relationship to incarnation, and he's Jonathan Pajot, right? And so I see that. So, but Christianity does that, and it anchors Neoplatonism to the earth and to the fertility and fecundedness of the earth. Totally.
And the goodness of the earth too.
And the goodness, well, that's what I was trying to allude to. Yeah, the goodness of the earth, precisely because it's generative beauty. But also because of Christianity's ability, and you can see Platonism, Neoplatonism struggling with this. It's trying to, Socrates started this, and you can see Plato and they keep trying to stretch Eros and transform it, and they're doing it. But then Christianity comes in and says, you know what you're stretching towards? You're stretching towards agape. That's what it is. And it says the Logos and the agape are and I think that was an innovation that Neoplatonism was seeking, but pagan Neoplatonism was seeking, and couldn't quite generate it within itself. And so those two things, I think, make me appreciate and spend more time in Christian Neoplatonism than I do nowadays in pagan Neoplatonism. For that reason. One more thing to get back to the point Paul made. The point I made in Rebel Wisdom, and I've made it in another, I think who else I can't remember who I was talking to about this. I apologize. Well, about the hermeneutics of suspicion versus the hermeneutics of beauty. Right. The hermeneutics of suspicion is, right, it's born from the godfathers of postmodernity. This is a Ricoeur's point. It comes out of Freud and Marx and Nietzsche, right? And they are the So now what we do is we suspect everything. There's a hidden motive, there's a secret agenda, there's a conspiracy. And the moment of truth is the moment where we uncover and we reveal, j'accuse, where we reveal, right, the conspiracy. And
yeah,
that
the propositions are trying to deceive you into getting you to do the procedure that it wants.
Yeah, exactly. And this is prevalent. And then the point has been, it goes all the way back deeply into Plato, and you can see it running through into Hegel and Merleau-Ponty. Merleau-Ponty makes it really plain. He says, pay attention to, you cannot point to something as an illusion unless you're standing in something you take to be real. Illusions are parasitic on experiences, meaningfully structured experience, that you take to be in conformity to reality.
Right.
It makes no sense to say it's all an illusion. That's like saying everything's tall.
Right.
No
like when Daniel Dennett says consciousness is an illusion. Well,
and who's it an illusion to, and where is the illusion happening?
Yes.
Right?
Isn't illusion a conscious experience? Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's like there's no illusion in physics in the sense of an ontological entity. There's mass and energy. Oh, and look, there's illusion, and it has, you measure it like, that's ridiculous. Okay. Yeah. All of those moves, I think, are like mistaken. So the hermeneutics of suspicion is the idea that appearances are deceptive and distractive, right? And distorting. But they're dependent on the idea, not the idea, that's exactly the wrong word. They're dependent on the disclosure, right? The phenomenological realization of appearances as disclosing reality, as not being deceptive, as not being distractive, as not being distortive. And I put it to you, and this is D.C. Schindler, another Neoplatonist Christian, by the way, his proposal that should be the proper understanding of beauty, right? That beauty is when appearance discloses the depth of realness. And can beauty be hijacked? Anything anything can be hijacked. That's not a reason for rejecting it, right? So, and we have to remember, and this is Hahn's critique in Saving Beauty, we've reduced beauty to the smooth, to the pleasing. If you look in you read Plotinus says beauty is joyous, wondrous, and distressing. It should shock you. It distresses you. And, more modern thinkers more recent thinkers, I should say, not modern, more recent thinkers like Scari about beauty, right? The hermeneutics of beauty is more primordial and grounding than the hermeneutics of suspicion. It is dependent on the hermeneutics of beauty. And I think this is one of the great claims of Neoplatonism. I've been reading a lot of theology, and that Balthasar, Schindler, Clark, all of these people, and it's no coincidence that they're deeply Neoplatonic, are pointing theology to beauty as where theology needs to go right now. That's not me imposing on them. That is what they are talking about, and they're opening, and I'm reading Balthasar's book on Maximus, trying to feed two birds with one stone, right? And like this stuff, the hermeneutics of beauty is exactly what I'm talking about. Beauty is when we have good phenomenological reason to believe that our appearances are disclosing reality. Our attempts to make sense, phenomenologically make sense, not just conceptually, lived make sense, are in contact with reality. I'm reading Meek's book on contact with reality. She's integrating Polanyi and Merleau-Ponty and D.C. Schindler, and this is exactly the same point again and again and again. And I think Neoplatonism, one more advocacy for it, right, gives us a place where we can properly talk about reprioritizing the hermeneutics of beauty. It's not, by the way, this does not eradicate the hermeneutics of suspicion. You need it, because there are conspiracies and there are cabals and there is propaganda, there is bullshit. But it's to properly reorient us to say, no, but that is ultimately always dependent on a hermeneutics of beauty. And Neoplatonism, and it's no coincidence that all these modern theologians are current. I want to stop using that adjective modern. All these recent theologians are using Neoplatonism to do that, because Neoplatonism makes that argument repeatedly. That's the ancient argument against the Gnostics.
Yeah. Talking about in this little corner of the internet is also the question of nominalism. And one way to break that down is,
what does that mean?
Nominalism is basically the assertion that there are no real relations in the world, that all relations we simply project onto the world. An example for this conversation would be that beauty itself does not exist.
Mhm.
Beauty is only in the eye of the beholder. Now, the fact that that saying has truth, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, does not exhaust the reality that beauty is not only in the eye of the beholder. And again, that is demonstrable, that people, they might form a bell curve, but people will look at something and, you know, they've got facial symmetry. But, you know, Yosemite Valley, why is Yosemite Valley beautiful? I mean, psychologists might talk about the landscaping and vistas and predatory animals and all these kind of things. But the idea is that you have a capacity to apprehend a truth out in the world that you are experiencing as your apprehension of beauty. So in other words, C.S. Lewis in his book, The Abolition of Man, talks about Coleridge, where two people go up to a waterfall. One person says the waterfall is pretty, and the other person says the waterfall is sublime.
Mhm.
Now, the sublimity, sublime, basically is saying that the water, there's a beauty that is coming to us through the waterfall that we are apprehending, that beauty is not merely what I am projecting out into the world, but that what I have is a capacity to apprehend and to see real relations out there in the world. And in fact, you know, via Augustine, Neoplatonism, a bunch of these things, that in fact the beauty of God is shining through the waterfall to me, which is why the United States of America treats Yosemite National Park as sacred.
Mhm.
So, and it isn't just that, you know, these tricks are being played or that Yosemite is precious to me, but now when my grandmother leans over into my grandfather's casket, well, anybody taking a picture of that who doesn't know them might say, well, there's not a lot of beauty at all in that scene, unless maybe you fill in the picture and say, oh, here is a woman who has loved this man for 60 years. And they've had ups and downs and all kinds of things. And here at the end of their marriage, when she says that he is beautiful, she's making a statement about him, about the relationship, about their marriage, about their entire world. So that's part of the question, that beauty is one of these things. And the same with goodness. Is goodness merely in the eye of the beholder, or is there in fact a deeper goodness that shines through the relationships of things in the world that says, oh no, that is good, in a deeper way than merely human projection, which could be, say, merely psychological. So, and that's in many ways what a lot of the conversations, I mean, the reason Jordan Peterson, I think, came to prominence was he found a way to articulate to people who had sort of dismissed, oh, beauty is something we project into the world. No, maybe it's out there, and meaning too. Maybe, in fact, it's not the sense that I am projecting meaning or beauty onto the world, but I am apprehending these things in the world. And if that is the case, might there also be something beyond and beneath in the world that is worth pursuing? And then might, in fact, our lives be more than just walking around in this terrestrial form.